Hi, this is Sandy from SDS Digital, and an interesting question. How many modules could the Accord Sequarallel replace? Okay, exact replacements, no. That's not what the Sequarallel was designed to do. But functional replacement? Certainly. Here's a bunch of modules that could be replaced. And at the end, I'll have a total amount of money saved by not buying these modules, but just a Sequarallel instead. Immediately, we can replace the digital sequencer, as this is Sequarallel's primary function. The Sequarallel can record whole songs from a DAW, record notes into sequencer steps, record and layer loops of various sizes like a guitar looper, record CV and gates as notes to lay down a track, or create sequences manually on the screen which can be recorded into layers after. The Sequarallel can be a drum trigger sequencer. This module with 12 trigger outputs will sequence drums with the cadence effects and accent for $220. Not bad. The Sequarallel also has 12 trigger outputs and can record drum loops from a DAW, the same as with musical notes. Sequences can be manually created with up to 5 4-lane wide sequencers, thus 20 lanes, or tapped in live with any Midi pads controller. Now the Sequarallel can play up to 4 drums along with 4 VCOs at the same time. Per note probability is only in the really big sequencers, and that can be done with FX. A true analog sequencer has knobs on each step to set the pitch, and buttons to include steps. The maximum steps are 8, 16, or sometimes 32 in the larger ones. The Sequarallel can emulate an analog sequencer by using knobs or sliders from a Midi controller. The Midi CC to steps range is set in tracks record settings, then remote is enabled. The same knobs can switch functions to adjust a number of other parameters, including note effects. This tracker, a vertical step sequencer, is pretty much the only modular tracker out there. It has up to 64 steps in each tracker and can output to a set of 6 CVs, gates, and mod CVs. But Midi is an optional expansion. I will admit this module inspired the Sequarallel's tracks trackers. I didn't look at it that closely because I wanted to come up with my own ideas, which is why the effects events are per note instead of using a column in the tracker. This opened up a lot of possibilities unique to the Sequarallel. The Sequarallel's tracks trackers also have 64 steps, but 4 lanes to correspond with the 4 rows of output jacks on the panel. Each tracks in the playlist can have up to 8 different patterns that can be placed in any order. With 5 trackers, each with up to 8 patterns, and up to 8 note effects bundles per pattern, there's 320 unique note effects bundles. Can't beat that. Bundles have random effects and echo or ratchet with their own micro arps, CC jumps, pitch, probability, and many other interesting effects. Very few modules are able to record Midi as it is being played in, but this one does. It can record in real time to a running sequence of up to 64 steps. Notes will be quantized into steps, and there's 8 dedicated outputs for percussion triggers, so drums can be built on each pass. Most importantly, it can output Midi as well. The Sequarallel can also record to a step sequencer, which of course is tracks, but via external Midi keyboard or pads. Some keys can be assigned to erase, stack, or cycle the lanes on the fly. Effects set to some of these steps can be protected, so effects will be applied to the new notes as well. The closest thing to a full Midi recorder sequencer is this weird calculator thing. It's not out yet. I'm comparing it because there's the possibility they might make it into a module in the future. This semi-DIY machine is reported to be able to record and play back Midi and arrange it or records it into parts. The Sequarallel does exceed its capabilities, as you can see, but being heavily biased, plus having never used the RK008, I can't say how it is to use. The MIDI I/O is matched, and the maximum parts for song is slightly less, but that's open to interpretation. The Sequarallel records and plays its layers and MIDI song, plus all timed effects, in real time. MIDI clock time, so it can be sped up or slowed down and still play as before. These types of recordings can be quantized to improve sync when needed, but also can sound natural or even have a swing applied. As a CV to MIDI, there isn't the jack count like this module. There's only 3 inputs, but they can control a lot. CC, pitch bend, player stop, remote control, and of course CV to MIDI notes. 3 notes, or 1 note with a gate and velocity, which can then be scaled, transposed, and arpeggiated. A CV to MIDI module can be so handy. This one has gate and CV outs from notes, or less gates and more CVs from MIDI CCs. The Sequarallel will also directly output 4 gates and CVs from a MIDI source, and also recognizes pitch bends for those CVs. It also has adjacent velocity outputs that can be changed to output any CC or velocity with an internal envelope. That removes the need for external envelope generator for your VCOs. A direct MIDI to drums module is needed to play modular drums from a DAW. This module will do that for 8 drums plus possibly another parameter. The Sequarallel's drum mode can also output drum triggers live from a DAW or MIDI pads. Up to 12 drums can be chosen on screen, and the trigger width set. There's 8 layout presets as well. The 3 CVIO jacks can be set to output CC parameters if also needed. Speaking of live, the Sequarallel can live arpeggiate MIDI outputs from a keyboard, just like the ARP on a synth. Better yet, up to 4 different ARPs can be active, even from the same source. It's like a poly-ARP. The settings are as involved as a synth with a mask sequencer, latch, and direction control to name a few. ARPs can be gate plus CV and also on a specific MIDI channel. This quad LFO has very few options. This one is somewhat better, but more HP. At minimum, there should be a sync trigger. The Sequarallel's first 4 CC outs can be configured to be up to 4 free-running or synced LFOs. The waveforms can be anything, as the envelope section is used to make them. The trigger source can be a certain MIDI drum, notes on a certain channel, the clock, every bar, or even from an external trigger source via CC5 or CC6 jacks. All 4 envelopes are independent. With envelope modules, or ADSRs, you can get by pretty minimally with the basics. But stepping outside of the box and feeding that VCA something unconventional opens up a whole new soundscape. That's why modules like this and this exist. The Sequarallel's envelope generators offer the same capabilities as a built-in feature. One big advantage is they can be loaded with a project all ready to go, or copied from other projects. The 3 methods to create them is the standard ADSR method, CV draw, or parametric adjustments. As each row of jacks is a note, envelopes can be multiplied with the note velocities, adding another dimension to the output. Envelopes can optionally output to a MIDI CC as well. There are some CV recorder modules out there like this one, or our RITEM, but the Sequarallel has this in spades as well. Firstly, as you saw, the draw envelope method can be used to capture short 2 or 3 second modulations on the CC5 jack. This is fast enough to capture audio rates which can then be slowed down to use as an envelope. This is fun to play with and can be captured and used immediately while playing whatever it is you wish to modulate. Another way is to convert the CV to a MIDI CC so it can be recorded into a layer. Then CV mode is used to convert it back to a CV to output. Up to 3 CVs can be recorded at once onto the same layer if required. The advantage of this is the recording can be much longer. Many recordings can be made, then easily played from the playlist. Plus they can be saved permanently. The disadvantage is, because it follows the MIDI clock, the resolution asks that the CV be a slower changing one. Some can be fast and coarse, but turning on smooth will soften them up. It's amazing how much can be fit into a Midi stream. Besides a computer, I don't believe a true hardware multitrack MIDI player exists anymore. Something that you could download a GM song into, one way or another, and then play it directly into a GM synth, bypassing the computer altogether and having it sound exactly as it did coming from the computer. There are modules capable of playing Type 0 MIDI, like the DJing Mark IV. But as for multitrack, only the Sequarallel can do this. Perhaps it's not the end-all performance solution, but apart from software synths, it will replace that laptop. Plus, it can quickly customize MIDI track in ways a DAW just isn't geared to do. Many have said, how can I use this with menus and such a small display? The Sequarallel can be remote controlled in most aspects. Hundreds of parameters can be linked to MIDI knobs, sliders, pads, or keys. Up to 128 notes and CCs can be used to control 256 things. This can be set up globally for all projects or per project, or both as a priority setting. Also, smart remote modes can be used for playing record control as well as solo and mute tracks. When I am DJing, I use 24 white keyboard keys to select different drum loops, and with drum loops 9 to 16, a set of 8 white keys to select the present mirror offsets to modify those drums in amazing ways. I wouldn't be without it. Generative music from the Sequarallel is very possible with blocks in the playlist acting upon each other in infinite combinations thanks to PLFX attributes and conditional blocks. The design and software UI layout of this module seems to lend a hand in this, as many times I have no idea what is going to happen. Now to wrap up the video in a fun way by adding up the cost of all the modules shown that could be replaced by a Sequarallel. Oh my god! Of course, if you want to do several of these functions at once, you might need another Sequarallel or two. I hope you enjoyed this informal comparison. Thanks for watching.